You have 5 seconds to get this homeless woman away from the counter before I call security myself. I have a merger to close in 20 minutes, and I am not losing millions because Grandma here can't remember her PIN code. The man shouting was wearing a $3,000 Italian suit. His name was Brad, and he was the kind of man who checked his Rolex every 30 seconds just so people would notice it. He stood there, tapping his polished leather shoe on the marble floor, glaring at the small, frail figure in front of him. She was 90 years old. Her name was Hattie. She wore a faded floral dress that had likely been bought in the late 90s and a wool coat that had seen better decades. She leaned heavily on a wooden cane, her hands trembling slightly as she dug through a worn-out canvas tote bag. To everyone in that high-end downtown bank, she looked like she didn't belong. She looked like she had wandered in off the street to ask for spare change. But Brad had no idea that the screen the teller was about to turn around wouldn't just show a number. It would show him exactly how small he really was. It was a Tuesday morning, the busiest time at the First City Bank. The air conditioning was humming, and the room smelled like expensive cologne and old money. Hattie had been standing at the counter for what felt like an eternity. Her movements were slow, deliberate, and to a man like Brad, who lived his life in the fast lane, excruciatingly painful to watch. "I'm sorry, baby," Hattie whispered to the young teller, her voice raspy with age. "My eyes aren't what they used to be. I'm looking for my passbook. I know it's in here somewhere." The teller, a young woman named Sarah, offered a patient smile. Sarah had only been working at the bank for 3 months. She was kind, the type of person who still believed in treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their clothes. "Take your time, ma'am," Sarah said softly. "There's no rush." "No rush?" Brad barked from behind Hattie. He stepped forward, invading her personal space, looming over her small frame. "Actually, there is a rush. Some of us actually contribute to the economy. Some of us have places to be. If you're just here to cash a $10 Social Security check, use the ATM outside like the rest of the charity cases." The bank went silent. A few other customers looked over, uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. Nobody wanted to cross Brad. He was a VIP client, the CEO of a tech startup that was the talk of the town. He radiated power and arrogance. Hattie stopped digging in her bag. She didn't turn around. She just stiffened slightly. She slowly pulled out a pair of cracked reading glasses and placed them on her nose. Finally, her wrinkled hand emerged from the bag, holding a small, weathered blue book. "I found it," she said softly, sliding it across the marble counter. "I just want to check my balance, please. I haven't been to the bank in a very long time." Brad let out a loud, theatrical groan. He pulled out his phone, pretending to make a call, but spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Yeah, I'm still at the bank. It's a joke. I'm stuck behind someone's great-grandmother who probably thinks a debit card is witchcraft. I swear, they let anyone in here these days." Sarah, the teller, felt a knot in her stomach. She hated seeing people treated this way. She took the blue book. It was an old style of savings book, the kind the bank hadn't issued in 20 years. "Okay, ma'am," Sarah said, typing into her computer. "Let me just pull up your profile. It might take a second because the account has been dormant for a while." "Dormant?" Brad scoffed. "That means empty. Listen, lady. Here." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. He crumpled it up and tossed it onto the counter next to Hattie's hand. "Take it. That's probably more than you have in that account anyway. Just take it and leave so I can get back to work." Hattie looked at the money. Then, slowly, she turned her head. For the first time, she looked Brad in the eye. Her eyes were cloudy with cataracts, but there was a sharpness behind them that caught him off guard. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. "I don't need your money, son," Hattie said, her voice surprisingly steady. "And patience is a virtue you can't buy, no matter how nice your suit is." Brad's face turned red. He wasn't used to being talked back to, certainly not by someone who looked like Hattie. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I'm about to close a deal that's worth more than your entire life's earnings. I could buy this bank if I wanted to. Is there a problem here?" The voice came from the side. It was Mr. Henderson, the bank manager. He was a tall man who was terrified of losing high-profile clients like Brad. He saw the tension, saw the crumpled $100 bill, and immediately made his choice. "Mr. Sterling," the manager said, nodding apologetically to Brad, "I am so sorry for the delay. We strive to provide efficient service to our elite members." He turned his attention to Hattie, his tone instantly shifting from deferential to dismissive. "Ma'am, if you are holding up the line, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. We can assist you at a desk later, once the paying customers have been served." Hattie looked at the manager. "I am a paying customer," she said. "I've been banking here since before you were born, young man. I just want to check my balance." "She's wasting everyone's time," Brad yelled, checking his watch again. "Manager, get her out, or I'm moving my corporate accounts to Chase across the street today. I mean it." The manager panicked. Losing Brad's account would ruin his quarterly bonus. He reached out to gently but firmly guide Hattie away. "Ma'am, please. You're causing a disturbance. Come with me, or I'll have to call security." "Wait!" Sarah the teller interrupted. Her voice trembled, but she spoke up. "Mr. Henderson, I found the account. It just loaded." "Not now, Sarah," the manager snapped. "Just print a receipt and get her moving." "But sir," Sarah said, her eyes glued to the computer screen. Her face had gone completely pale. Her mouth was slightly open. "You need to see this. The system, it's flagging a priority alert." Brad laughed, a cruel barking sound. "Priority alert? What, did she overdraw her $5? Is she negative? Did the system crash trying to count to zero?" "No," Sarah whispered. She looked up at Hattie with wide, awestruck eyes. Then she looked at the manager. "Sir, look at the tenure date, and look at the balance." The manager, annoyed, walked around the counter to look at Sarah's screen. He adjusted his tie, ready to authorize a closure of the account. He glanced at the monitor. He froze. His eyes scanned the number. He blinked, thinking it was a glitch. He leaned in closer, his nose almost touching the screen. He counted the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It kept going. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the kind of silence that sucks the air out of a room. "Is something wrong?" Brad asked, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Why are you looking at the screen like you've seen a ghost? Just tell her she's broke and kick her out." The manager slowly stood up. He looked at Hattie. He was sweating now. His hands were shaking. He looked at her tattered coat, her wooden cane, the worn-out tote bag. He suddenly realized that the old-style passbook wasn't old because she was poor. It was old because she was original. "Mr. Sterling," the manager said, his voice cracking, "I need you to be quiet." Brad's jaw dropped. "Excuse me? You're telling me to be quiet?" "Yes," the manager said, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "I am." He turned to Hattie, his posture completely changing. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of extreme submission. "Mrs. Gabriella, I didn't realize it was you. We haven't seen you in person in years." Hattie, Mrs. Gabriella, smiled a small, sad smile. 12 years, to be exact. Since my husband passed. I usually let my accountants handle things, but today I wanted to come in myself." "Gabriella?" Brad frowned, trying to place the name. "Wait, why does that sound familiar?" Sarah, the teller, finally found her voice. She turned the monitor screen around so it faced the lobby, so it faced Brad. "Because," Sarah said, her voice gaining confidence, "this is Hattie Gabriella, as in the Gabriella estate." Brad looked at the screen. The balance wasn't $5. It wasn't $5,000. The balance in the checking account alone was $45 million. And right below that, listed under Assets Managed by Bank, was a figure that made Brad's knees weak. $350 million. But it was the name at the top of the account that made Brad's blood run cold. Owner, landlord, First City Plaza. This building, the bank itself, the office tower Brad's startup was renting on the 40th floor. Hattie didn't just have an account at the bank. She owned the building the bank was sitting in. Brad felt like the floor was tilting. He had just thrown a crumpled $100 bill at his own landlord. He had just tried to kick out the woman who could evict his entire company with a single phone call. Brad stuttered. The arrogance evaporated, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. Mrs. Gabriella, I had no idea. You don't look like... I don't look like I have money? Hattie finished for him, tapping her cane on the floor. Is that what you were going to say, young man? She turned fully toward him now. She didn't look frail anymore. She looked powerful. Let me tell you something about money, Hattie said, her voice carrying through the silent bank hall. My husband and I started a cleaning business 60 years ago. We scrubbed floors in this very building when it was owned by a man just like you. A man who looked at us like we were dirt. We saved every penny. We invested. We bought property when no one else would. We built an empire not by wearing fancy suits, but by working hard and treating people with respect. She pointed a shaking finger at the crumpled $100 bill on the counter. You think that paper makes you a man? You think that watch makes you important? You are poor, son. You are poor in spirit, and that is a kind of poverty no bank account can fix. Brad looked around. Everyone was staring at him. The people in line who he had mocked were smirking. The security guard was suppressing a laugh. He wanted to disappear. Mrs. Gabriella, Brad stammered, his hands held up in surrender. Please, it's a misunderstanding. I'm having a stressful day. My merger, I'm looking for an investor, and the pressure. Oh, I know about the merger, Hattie said calmly. Brad froze. You do? Yes, Hattie said. My financial advisors brought your file to me last week. Sterling Tech. You applied for a bridge loan from my private equity trust. You need $5 million to keep your company afloat until the merger goes through, isn't that right? Brad's face went from pale to ghostly white. She was the investor. She was the angel his team had been talking about. The mysterious silent partner who was going to save his company. I was coming here today to authorize the transfer, Hattie said. I wanted to see the man I was betting on. I wanted to see if he was a good leader, if he was a good person. She paused, letting the weight of the moment crush him. I think I've seen enough. Hattie turned back to the teller, Sarah. Sweetheart, she said kindly. Could you please help me with a transaction? Anything, Mrs. Gabriella, Sarah said, beaming. Cancel the transfer to Sterling Tech, Hattie said clearly. And then, I'd like to withdraw my personal accounts from this branch. If the manager here thinks it's acceptable to harass an old woman because she doesn't look like a VIP, I don't think my money is safe here. The manager, Mr. Henderson, looked like he was about to faint. Mrs. Gabriella, please. I beg you. It was a mistake. We can fix this. You can fix it, Hattie said, by learning how to treat people. She looked back at Sarah. You, however, my dear, you were kind, you were patient. What is your name? Sarah, ma'am. Well, Sarah, Hattie smiled, I'm going to need a personal account manager for my portfolio moving forward. Someone who knows how to treat a customer. The job pays double what you make here, and you won't have to deal with men like him. She gestured to the manager. Interested? Sarah dropped her pen. Tears welled up in her eyes. Yes, ma'am. Hattie patted her hand. Then she turned back to Brad one last time. He was slumped against the counter, defeated, knowing his merger was dead, his loan was gone, and his reputation was destroyed. Pick up your money, son, Hattie said, nodding at the crumpled bill. You're going to need it. Hattie adjusted her tote bag, turned around, and began the long, slow walk to the exit. The silence in the bank held until she was all the way out the door. The security guard rushed to open it for her, tipping his cap with newfound respect. Brad stood there, alone in the middle of the crowd. He looked at the floor. He picked up the crumpled $100 bill. It felt light, useless. He had walked into the bank feeling like a king because of what was in his wallet. He walked out, feeling like a beggar because of what was in his heart. In the end, the screen didn't just show a balance, it showed the truth. We live in a world that is obsessed with appearances. We judge people by the shoes they wear, the cars they drive, and the texture of their clothes. We think that wealth is loud, but often real power is silent. And real value isn't about what you have in the bank. It's about how you treat the person standing in front of you. Never look down on anyone unless you're helping them up. Because you never know who you're talking to, and you never know when the tables might turn.